Die TV. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and listen on your podcast platform.
Hi everybody, Jerry Taggart here. Now be sure to watch Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV by subscribing on YouTube and following them on social media for all the latest Leicester City news and information. Come on you foxes!
Strap yourself in,
because we're set up, switched on and ready to go.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's live.
Good evening, fellow Fox fans. How are we doing? There's a match on tonight, so we're a little bit early. But what better way to prepare for Euros 2020 semi-final than watching a bit of a battle going on Leicester Till I Die TV? And that's what you're watching. And we are on Facebook, Leicester Till I Die, the group. We're on Twitter at Leicester TID. And if you are watching us on YouTube, and if you're not, please get over there and watch us. You can get us on Leicester Till I Die TV. And if you're over there, please subscribe. You know I like my buttons to be pressed, and if there's a button over there, like, subscribe, follow, just give it a press. We would be very grateful. Yeah, it's a bit of a battle tonight. It's Leicester War.
Let battle commence.
It's the Leicester War Show
On Leicester Till I Die TV.
But who will win? Join in now.
Let me read a few names off for you. Freddy Krueger, Hannibal Lecter, Michael Myers, Frankenstein, Dracula, Norman Bates, Jigsaw, Peter Taylor, Frank McLintock. What do they all have in common? No, they're not all my co-hosts here on Leicester Till I Die TV. But I tell you what, for starters, you wouldn't want any of them to manage your football club. Fortunately, we've had two of them. Yes, Peter Taylor and Frank McLintock. And I've got to be honest with you, Leicester, we've made some bad choices when it comes to managers in the past. I mean, Dave Bassett, do you remember him? Ian Holloway. Craig Levine, my personal favourite, David Pleat, Paulo Sousa. I could go on and on and on, but these two stand out. These two stand out as inheriting really good teams, but actually destroying those teams, turning what was a good team into Sunday League has-beens. Peter Taylor, he destroyed a great Martin O'Neill team. We all know the Martin O'Neill era. But Frank McLintock, for those of you that are of a certain age, unlike myself, that doesn't remember, he followed Jimmy Bloomfield. And he totally destroyed one of our best ever sides. But who was the worst? That's the question. To try and convince me, we've got two of those on the list. I think Freddy Krueger and Hannibal Lecter. You decide who's who. Good evening, Hannibal and Freddy.
Good evening, I'll take Freddy.
Well,
how you doing, Chris?
you've been
How
a
you doing, Brad?
nightmare to me on many a show, mate.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, you don't need to finish that sentence.
Michael, thank you very much. Hi to you. He's already sticking his numbers to the mast. You might have a difficult job on tonight, Craig. Michael Gamble is definitely going for Taylor. Facebook user is going for Peter Taylor. And just to reiterate, Michael here is saying, yeah, Peter Taylor was the worst. And it's David. Sorry, David. One name, two names. You do confuse me. David, good evening. So, first of all, Brad, you've got Peter Taylor. You must be feeling pretty confident.
I don't need 5 minutes, Chris. I'll set the comments. So I've got all this note work and all this research. I think I'm just going to be scarring people and sending them back to therapy. So I apologise in advance when I give you horrid flashbacks with the memories of Taylor.
But I mean, he was the Peter Taylor of his day, Frank McLintock.
He was, but well, you say he was, but he was much worse. You know, as we're about to find out. So
yes,
you know, I don't think you can. I think by the end, I don't think you'll be able to mention the two of them side by side ever again.
And it's hard, like I say, this is part of my therapy. As Brad said there, talking about these things does help. Okay, so the way that we're going to go this, I mean, you guys know, but just to explain, we did one in the past, which was the other end of the scale, which was Claudio versus Brendan. Who won that one?
I won it on your split decision. Yeah. Chris.
Did I? Good. Right. So it's Brad's going out for revenge then.
Well, I think I mean we've already seen people putting their. I'm just waiting for Peter Taylor to come up and say Peter Taylor was the worst.
Well, like I just say, before anybody does actually decide that they are in Brad's camp,
North Macedonia are going to win it. Get your bets on. You heard it here first. North Macedonia are going to wipe the floor of the tournament. Shock of the decade, shock of the century, you name it. You thought 5,000 to 1 was good odds. Well, listen to it. Get your bets in. North Macedonia to not just get out of the group, but they're going to win it. North Macedonia, come on.
What are you? Some kind of doomsday machine, boy?
I realise that video actually looks like, you know, one of those Sun videos where it's sort of done with a little camera in the lapel and it's really bad. Brad, you know, you're going on holiday tomorrow, mate. I had to get one more in, but you can thank Craig for that.
Yeah. So they stitch you up before the start of the show. I like
You're
that.
welcome.
Right, let's get into it. So we're going to go with Peter Taylor first. So Craig, I will move you into I won't say the back room, but you might take that the wrong way, the green room, and we will come back to you in a bit.
All right. Good luck.
Oh, he did say good luck there. Apologise. I cut him off in his prime. So, not saying obviously that Brad can talk, because we all can when it comes to football, but we've got a timer on it. So they've got the 2 5-minute slots and then a summary afterwards. And this is going to be interesting. So here we go. When you say your first word, Brad.
Yeah, we're just to make sure we're doing his time at Leicester first, aren't we?
We are, yes.
Okay, brilliant. Right, let me just take you back to the fateful day that the Leicester board made the worst decision in history for the club when they decided, against the wills of probably most interested at the time. Let me give you a few names of who we could have had as manager and would have saved us from the worst time in Leicester's history. That is, we were linked with David Moyes, who in today's name might get a bit of a snigger until what he's done with West Ham this season, but he was doing really well with Everton. We all know what he did at Everton and his time there. We was also linked with Big Sam. We maybe could have had the players that Bolton had playing for Leicester City. Could you imagine if we'd have hired Big Sam and he did what he did with them, but he did that at Leicester after Martin O'Neill? Ridiculous. So they should probably be discussion for worst managerial decision, bringing in Peter Taylor. Peter Taylor was the man who was left with the unenvious task of trying to achieve more or continue the success of Martin O'Neill. So you may think, oh, well, you can give someone a pass for that. They normally, need a bit of time. And yeah, the journey started well because he didn't rip the team apart at the first instinct. Spent some money, that's fine. Took some players out. Normally when a manager's like, you're thinking players that aren't needed throughout his time. He got rid of the fantastic captain. Most people's number one pick when they think of a person who's their favourite fox, Mr. Steve Walsh himself, forced out the club pretty much, what it was worth. Brought it, took out Tony Cottee, TC. Stan Collymore was out the door in no time under Taylor. Couldn't, because he hasn't got the managerial sieve and brain to cope with Collymore. Martin O'Neill was able to contain him in his breakdown through football. Mr. Stan the Man Collymore. Taylor couldn't. Taylor didn't like the ego challenge. Tony Cottee was just out the door as well. In December, Lennon had enough. He left on his own accord. We all remember him bringing in the certain Mancini, the disaster that had 5 appearances for us, the only club he couldn't score for, and went, this is that crap, I'm going to actually leave football and go into coaching, more into Fiorentina. Yeah, so he did a great job in bringing people and in. Let's remember these classic names before I mention the obvious one. Gary Rowett, Callum Davidson, Trevor the Traveller Benjamin, and I mean that in the fact that he's probably had more clubs and appearances throughout his career. He brought in Dennis Wise, so the worst manager probably brought in a player that most thought was the worst player we could have signed. Ian Walker, probably his only decent signing he ever made, and Jamie Scowcroft, a hero in the Division 1, was a firm favourite in the end, but realistically he was never good enough for the Premiership. I'll skip past the good parts because no one wants to remember the good parts from a guy that did so badly, because that was only off the revenue of what O'Neill had brought to it. Wycombe Wanderers, a manager so inept that he got beat by a guy who was brought off teletext, was signed up on teletext. Now, a good manager can normally take an embarrassment in the FA Cup, even that one, can't they? Southampton have done a 9-0, they recovered from results like that. A good manager might go on a bit of a bad run, 3 or 4 games, the embarrassment kind of hard to get over, fair enough. After that, any manager worth his salt can turn it around. If they're not good enough, they should be out the door. 9 defeats out of the last 10 games. After that game, we lost 9 out of 10. By September in 2001, he was rightfully out the door. After bringing in all that dross, let's remember he started that season with a 5-0 defeat to newly promoted Bolton. He lost 4-0 in an absolute drubbing to Arsenal. We all remember the own goals and gas DVD that Adi Akinbaye could have released out of his own standard. I tried not to mention him until the very last minute because it was that disastrous. He ruined his career as well. And then he lost to Charlton and he was finally sacked. I mean, worst manager. The fact that everything involved in bringing Taylor to the club was a disaster says it all. I've just seen the clock, realised I've still got a bit of time to talk about him. I don't really want to, too much. It's making me feel a bit sick having to do this research to bring it to you. It didn't get any better from the very beginning to the very end of his tenure, right? When he sunk his claws in, when he snided us all thinking he wasn't going to change things and he changed it, he proved he can't manage a team to save his life.
And there goes the bell. Well done, Brad. Well done, sir. Again, an early finisher. You can get pills for that now and cream, Very, very well put across. As playing devil's advocate here, like you say,
Yeah.
he did bring Mancini in, who was the equivalent of, I suppose that the day was Jock Wallace trying to bring Johan Cruyff in, wasn't it?
Yeah. And five appearances, no goals, and decided football, he'd ruined him football that much for him. He became a coach straight away. Said everything about it, didn't it?
We were top of the league under Peter Taylor 2 weeks.
Yeah, and look what happened when he tinkered. The second he did any of his own integrations.
Yes.
We were playing with players that were actually still thriving off O'Neill. Let's get that straight. We know for a fact that it was
he was
live.
He came to us from he came to us from England under 21s with a great record. He was actually England manager while he was with us. He made David Beckham captain.
I mean, he had to step in for one game and make someone captain. Do you know what generation he was in charge of? There's no way he had an impact on there. No wonder he gave Beckham. He was probably the only one that went, well, at the end of the day, I'll speak to the players, innit? Yeah, gather the levers to it and I'll get the job done. Them teams could have strolled out. I could have been sat on there and managed England for that one game and still won it.
Well,
you don't get nothing for being an England manager, mate. Nothing for
What I'm going to say is that there are those positives. Rob, good evening to Rob. He's gone for Craig Levine. Well, we may be discussing him in another program, but I think he was more of the maybe the wrong guy, but was definitely the wrong time. And as Turf Moore, hiya Dan, how you doing? Still burping. He says, what about the Frank Sinclair own goals? Yeah, he got a few, didn't he? Old Frankie, he got a few.
Yeah, but he weren't manager. He's definitely up there for one of the most calamitous players part of it, but he didn't bring Frank in, so I couldn't give him credit for that one, unfortunately.
Did you mention Junior Lewis?
Oh, I didn't need to.
Too late.
I didn't mention him.
Late.
Did not mention him.
Too late.
Didn't need to mention him. You make that go. I didn't mention him.
I'm afraid I've got to take Brad out there. He had his moment. He could have had it. Oh, is that an own goal there, Craig?
Well, interesting that you brought up a few points that I was going to bring up in the summary, but thanks for priming them anyway. And I will be mentioning Junior Lewis. So I'll give him his moment.
So
because it's not all about just saying how bad your manager was. You've got to do the comparison about how bad he was against the other manager. Yes. So we have to look at the other manager as well. And so I'll be trying to do that as well.
Well, for those of us, those of a certain age that don't remember our Frank, he did take over from Jimmy Bloomfield, who had one of the, and I don't want to sort of usurp you, but I'm trying to sort of say how good Leicester were before, as I did about Martin O'Neill. But the Jimmy Bloomfield years, we didn't win anything, but were great to watch. The fans wanted Bloomfield out. And as I always say, be careful what you wish for. Because this is what happens. As soon as you're ready, as soon as you say your first word, mate, off you go.
So Frank McLintock, a lot of you won't know Frank McLintock. He actually played for Leicester City and was a great success at Leicester City. In fact, he's one of only 5 players who have been inducted, 5 Leicester City players who were inducted into the English Football Hall of Fame, along with Don Revie, Gary Lineker. Can't remember the other 2, but he's one of 5. There's only 5, and he's one of them. So you can understand why the club probably gave him a chance. It was, as you say, Jimmy Bloomfield had built this fantastic team of swashbuckling football, for the want of a better word. I don't think there were many candidates out there, so they turned to one of their ex-players, in Frank McLintock. Now, the problem with that is that he had no managerial expertise or experience. It definitely no expertise, but he had no experience whatsoever. So Leicester City had finished 11th in the season that Bloomfield left us, and so McClintock inherited that team, and that was a team that included Worthington. It included Weller, some of the greatest players that Leicester City have ever had, and he had a couple of injuries to start the season, but the start wasn't too bad when he came in. Remember, this is his first season as a professional football manager at Leicester. So the first 3 games didn't go too bad. Drew 2 and won 1. And the team that beat West Ham, in his second game, beat them 1-0. Still included the likes of Whitworth, Dennis Rofe, Steve Kember, John Samuels, Keith Weller, Frank Worthington. That's the team that he had. And a lot of those are favourites of the older generation of Leicester fans, I would say. By the time of his final game in charge, Worthington had been replaced by Alan Waddle. Let me say that again. That's Alan Waddle. He'd scored 1 goal for Liverpool. That was enough for Frank McLintock to think, yeah, that's the man to replace the legend of Frank Worthington. To be fair to him, he did manage to match his Liverpool performance by scoring 1 goal for us as well. He also, in that team, he got rid of a lot of those stars. So Worthington went to Bolton, where he continued to be a star. In fact, scored one of the greatest goals ever seen. If you haven't seen it, one where he flicks it up a few times over his head and bangs it in. So he was still at the top of his game, but he sold it. And the team that ended his tenure included the likes of his old pals Eddie Kelly from Arsenal. If Miss Melina's watching at all, here's your Arsenal link. Frank McLintock, Arsenal legend, obviously, brought in Eddie Kelly, brought in George Armstrong, Dave Webb from Chelsea. These were players who were all at the end of their careers, and he thought they would do the job to replace the legends that he got rid of. So following that unbeaten start in his first 3 games, he decided to then mould the team into his own liking, and in the next 12, we drew 2 and lost 10. The season included a run of 1 win in 26 games. 26 games, 1 win. Can you imagine? Taylor never got anywhere near that. He'd lose a few, but he won a few as well. McLintock didn't even wait to be sacked. He walked. He didn't wait. He went in April with relegation virtually guaranteed. Now, you've heard throughout football of 1-season wonders. Frank McLintock was a 1-season disaster and clearly the worst manager Leicester have ever had. And now I'm just saying that we're into the final minute. What I'd like to say is that when you look at him against Taylor had a lot to work with, and still did some good things. McLintock had club legends to work with and decided to dismantle the team. As I say, the only players who remained from his final game in charge from the team that he inherited were Steve Whitworth and Steve Sims. He'd managed to get rid of every other player that the Bloomfield had used during this sort of period when, as I say, I think we may have finished second one year under Bloomfield when he was the glory boy, the closest we were ever going to get. But McLintock dismantled the team, brought in all his old mates.
And that's time up, Craig. Craig, let me just bring you back in and let me remove that. You may want, Craig, just while we go off to Brad in a second for his second presentation, just to recheck your internet link because you're very crackly and very breaking up. I don't know if that's the same for Brad, but it was certainly coming across that way. I'm just seeing if Brad's going to nod at me in the green room. Yes, he's nodding away. He's like the dog in the back of a car. He's nodding away there. So you just might want to look at that. Yeah, some very good points. And later on, we might even look at the things like the win percentages, which are the difference. But yeah, that was some very, well, we'll say good points. There weren't good points, of course. There were bad points. Rob says Weller was still there with his white tights. Yeah, he only had the white tights on in the Bloomfield years, I think you'll find. And, maybe if he'd worn the white tights, Craig, he might have saved McLintock's career.
Well, you never know. I think he had a few problems. As I say, he got rid of Worthington. I think there were extenuating circumstances behind that. I don't think the club helped him, to be honest, with the Worthington situation. But to bring in all your old pals based on nothing other than you played with them, it clearly wasn't the way to go.
I think I I joked under the Craig Levine years and that we were almost like a Derby and Jones club, because we were getting all these players around that time, Les Ferdinand and players like that, which were great players, but at the end of the career. And it was pretty much the same with Frank McLintock. We were turning into the OAP club.
At least McClintock had decency to run.
We were, and you know, I mean, he clearly had no I can say experience, so he didn't have a network of players that he could come to. He even signed a guy called Lammy Robertson from Exeter. That's the type of player that he identified to replace some of these legendary players. Lammy Robertson. Let me say the name again, just in case you'll never hear it again. Lammy Robertson from Exeter. He played 5 games. I mean, he couldn't identify anyone. He couldn't identify a player in a lineup.
The Junior Lewis of his day. But again, I have to say, as much as Brad forgot to mention Junior Lewis, what happened to Roger Taylor?
He went on to be the drummer in Queen. I think you probably mean Roger Davis.
I do. And I was just saying, if you were awake there, he was probably a better drummer than he was a footballer. But
again, Roger Davis.
Signing.
Don't forget, I mean, Roger Davis came in to replace Alan Waddle, who came in to replace Frank Worthington. He was replacing the replacements that were that bad.
I had forgotten about Alan Waddle. He certainly was not unlike his namesake, was he?
No, he went on to Swansea and he scored 30 in 94 games. So he had something about him, but clearly McClintock wasn't a manager to bring that out.
Yes, at a different club, not unlike, of course, Peter Taylor and Adi Akinbaye, who had a brilliant time when he was at Burnley. Scott, good evening. How are you? I do hope your partner is better. I know she fell down the stairs the other day, so best wishes to your partner. Hope she's better. Things she does to get away from you, Scott. But I must admit, if you're going to do that again, don't let her do it 10 minutes before the kick-off of a football game. I'd have just left her lying there. I mean, don't. No, I'm joking. Before I get any letters of complaint, I am joking. I wouldn't do that. Well, football wife, daddy chips. I don't know. Okay. Right. So you've all done pretty good with that one. I think I know where I'm starting to lean, but we will see. Craig, you're sounding better now, but like I say, you were very crackly and what have you before. So I'm going to take you out. If you need to reboot, that's fine. Scott, hey, well said, Scott. The thought did cross his mind apparently, but just take her a cup of tea. You're all right. You're comfy. You're on the stairs. You're on carpet. Here's a cup of tea. I'll be back in 90 minutes. Craig, we'll see you again in a few minutes. And we will speak to Brad very quickly as I'm just about to reset the timer. So, Brad, we're there with the argument from your compatriot.
He's done a good job. Craig took on the challenge of bringing of arguing for a manager that maybe a few in the comments and myself included don't know too much about. Like, we know the straight up history from probably a quick Google search and knowing these players' names, and managers' names from the past. But no, he's done a really good job there to really get an argument, and I'm learning from it. So it's all good to hear the effort that's put in. So
some youngsters see only, and this is what worries me, and this is completely aside to the argument. And I'll just bring Craig back in here while he's still here. No, he's not. He's gone. He's black. He's not with us at that point. But we always joke, don't we, with the clubs like the young Man United fans only ever remember Man United being successful. The young Liverpool fans only ever know Liverpool not being successful. and the young Arsenal fans are just totally deluded. But of course, the same could be happening with Leicester in the fact that the young fans that have just started supporting us won't know the days that people like Craig and me had to put up with.
Yeah, that's true. But the most dedicated a fan to any club, once they're involved in it and they're brought into it, it's not really until they get told about these names that they maybe look and go, oh, I remember Taylor being rubbish and da. But I myself knew of Frank McLintock, and once I learned about him and someone told me, oh, you want to look at him, you think Taylor's this bad, well, someone who's just as bad was McLintock. So, you know, I'm always learning more stuff about this club. It's just an age thing and how much to dedicate it. At a certain age, it clicks.
Can I just say, you know, I may look 60, but I'm actually only about 35. It's just following Leicester that's done this to me. I had hair. I had hair in the 70s. If it wasn't for Leicester, I had longer hair than Dave Bartram of Show Waddy Waddy. And don't forget, that is now on the channel, Leicester Till I Die TV, an hour-long chat with Dave Bartram, who, of course, was the lead singer with Show Waddy Waddy through their glory years. And he, like me, we had longer hair than the girls, didn't we? Michael, you're quite right. Sorry, David. You have to change your name. David, we did have some bad days. Oh, my God, did we have some bad days. Yeah, 11,000 in the crowd. And that was a good day. That was a good day. Anyway, Brad, you ready? Craig, I'm not sure what's happening with Craig. I was trying to keep talking while he sort of mended, but he's kind of not, he's gone altogether now. Right, so he's got 5 minutes to get back. When you start your first word, we will start the timer. Your 5 minutes when you're ready.
Peter Taylor. You know, if you remember the names of the managers that I mentioned earlier that were linked with the job, we had Sam Allardyce and David Moyes. We even had bloody Cabbage Head himself, Steve Bruce, who was in line for the job, who I'd rather have had over Taylor. I never thought I'd find myself saying that about modern day Steve Bruce, but that's the case. You consider their track records, their history, their managerial records, and what they've gone on to, the clubs of stature they've gone on to manage. Regardless of their success, they've gone on to manage nonetheless, right? Chris mentioned that I left out Junior Lewis. Yeah, I did. He was that bad, and there was a reason for it to a point. But it's this point. You know, when you're a kid and you're playing football, right? And you turn up and you find out that the manager's got a son in a team, right? And he just so happens to play in your position. You ain't never playing a game of football for as long as you can. Not back when I was a kid. That was it. It was so frustrating because you either had to hope he, you know, you ended up hating him, didn't you? Well, that was Junior Lewis. Peter Taylor was his kid. He took him everywhere. Didn't matter where he went. Well, I had to do a lot of research for Taylor myself because even though I grew up around the Taylor area, I was still fairly young at the time. So to more understanding, right, what I managed to find out is he managed in total 13 clubs. He had 3 international stints. I'll get to them. Right, he managed 13 clubs. Now, unless you know this, in the comments, try and guess how many clubs, right, Peter Taylor had Junior Lewis out with them out of these 13, right? Leave them in the comments. I'm going to tell you the answer, and if you get it right, well done to you, right? Stature and managers we're talking about. You may be thinking, well, if this Junior Lewis you're on about, Brad, because you don't know about Taylor for whatever reason. Did he come from? Did he go all over the place with big clubs like these other managers might have done with their manager? With players like that, when they have favourite managers, he could have been no good. Listen to the list. This is the clubs he managed, right? Dagenham and Redbridge, Dartford, Enfield, Southend, Dover, Leicester, obviously, Brighton, Hull City, Crystal Palace, Kerala Blasters. It was written down funny. Don't ask me if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm guessing it's Blasters. Wycombe Wanderers. He managed the team and still couldn't beat in the FA Cup in charge of Leicester. Shows you how bad he isn't managing. Bradford, Gillingham, and then his international careers. England under-21s manager, he was there twice, right? Maybe you think, oh, maybe he picks an international then, this Junior Lewis. We all knew his passport was Brazilian, by the way. Well, no joke. Ever heard of the Bahrain national team? Yeah, he managed them for the 2011 Pan-Arab Games. Yeah, that took some research. He did, however, manage also to go down to the low depths of the Aussies and noisy neighbours in New Zealand. Only as assistant, though, from 2016 to 2017. So I'll give you a bit of a chance there. Obviously, club level, he only managed 13 clubs. Guess how many of them he spent more than one season at? Just the one. Just the one. You don't have to guess that. I'll just like, whilst you're typing away. If you can guess the team, get on you. Because the only team he spent more than one season at was Hull City. He was also the only Premiership side he managed. The only successful thing I think Peter Taylor did as a human being was when he was playing at Spurs and he got them relegated, playing for them. I don't care that he got promoted. They were in a promotion season. He got relegated. Probably the most decent thing he did, if you give our current history and our relationship and banter with Spurs. Wasn't anything to a rival, but it's just funny to think of now, isn't it? We was the only Premiership side he ever managed, so I don't get why we even brought him in. If you take his stature, you might argue he won 3 South Shield tournaments with the likes of Southend. Yes, in non-league football. His career as a footballer was probably the highlight of his whole entire career, and it's not a pretty read. His manager was low level, and it proved he was painfully out of his depth for Leicester. So very painfully out of his depth. And the fact that I had to research the Bahrain national team to make sure it wasn't some football team in Arab playing in a league, it was actually a national side that they had in their version of Olympic Games, I guess. Peter Taylor, his stint at Leicester or his manager career in a whole, which one was worse? I think they both come top of each chart, if you're asking me. That's it, I'm done.
What else can you add to that? I knew he'd done New Zealand as a caretaker, the Bahrainian national team.
Yeah.
I missed that one.
Arab Games, mate. I nearly fell over backwards. I had to research and make sure it weren't a game. I don't know. I was like, is this a game? Is this a game he was manager or something? Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, that's it, young man. We'll be back for a summary in a minute. Yeah. Thank you very much for quickly, that.
Just if there is any comments to the question that I left.
Oh, sorry, no, there isn't actually. What was the answers?
Right, the answer was 8. I'm sure you knew that, but I was just going to leave it to the end in case anyone did guess it. He played for 8 clubs, Junior Lewis, with him. I did leave the answer out purposely in case someone did throw out a guess. Sorry for that.
If anybody ever says jokes like, is Perez Brendan Rodgers' love child or anything like that, just go back and look at Junior Lewis and you know, in fairness, and let's just bring Craig back in here. Welcome back, Craig. In fairness, Junior Lewis was one of the few players who could make Carlton Palmer look good.
Well, indeed. I mean, he clearly had something about him that Peter Taylor liked. I think they were possibly photos of Peter Taylor's wife. But, you know, there had to be a reason. Yeah, he wasn't the best player. However, I will be able to point out something about Junior Lewis that some people may not know. And particularly within regards to the game that a lot of the argument is being hung upon, the infamous Wycombe game. So we shall see. Watch this space.
That will be interesting because that is still etched. That was another one. That was another one of those moments that I do like these in football. Another one of these be careful what you wish for moments, because, you know, it was the quarterfinals, wasn't it? And Wycombe were the lowest team out there. And we wanted, you know, I can remember saying, I want Wycombe Wanderers at home. We got Wycombe Wanderers at home. The rest is history. Brad, we'll have you back in a second. Yeah. Thanks very much, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
So, let's just see. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of bad managers. Brian Hamilton. I mean, I read the names out at the start. You know, can you remember Dave Bassett? Yeah, I mean, in fairness, he did come in to try and firefight Ian Holloway, who said he was going to put round pegs in round holes, and he couldn't find the holes. The aforementioned Craig Levine, who Craig knows that. Well, he doesn't know Craig Levine, but he knows my love of the guy.
Don't forget the 4 games of Martin Allen.
Well, yes, I was trying to, if I'm honest with you, but we hadn't got a long show that I could read all the names out of the bad managers, you know. But here we go. 5 minutes, your 5 minute start as soon as you say your first word. Good luck, Craig.
Cheers, mate. Well, I mean, let's remember here what we're doing is comparing 2 managers to decide who is the worst manager. Yes, Peter Taylor did a lot of bad things to our club, and it took us a while to get over it. However, when you look at Frank McLintock's general managerial record, it is actually record-breaking. He's a record-breaking manager, and I'll tell you why. And please hang on to this piece of information. Of all Leicester City managers who were in charge of our club for 5 or more games, that's it, 5 or more games. We've had caretaker managers who were in longer than that. Of all Leicester City managers who were in charge of Leicester City Football Club for 5 games or more, Frank McLintock has the lowest win percentage of any manager in our history. He won 12.5% of his games. 12.5. Peter Taylor won 35% of his. 35%. And we're trying to say that Peter Taylor was a worse manager than Frank McLintock. 12.5%. Okay. As you can imagine, after his record-breaking performance with Leicester, there wasn't a lot of teams who wanted to take him. And I'm just checking whether I'm still talking here. So there wasn't a lot of teams who wanted to take Frank McLintock. He ended up at Brentford. So we talk about the number of teams that Peter Taylor managed. Only one team wanted Frank McLintock, Brentford in League 3 or Division 3. Sorry, he came in. To be fair to him, they were languishing in 22nd spot at the time in Division 3, and he was brought in to save them. And to be fair, he did a fantastic job, and he managed to get them all the way up to 20th. So well done, Frank, there. He, in 3 seasons at Brentford, he got them into the top half once, and that was it. And then they slumped again, and guess what? He resigned yet again. He was then appointed as an assistant at Millwall to a manager called John Doherty. So I think he realised that he wasn't for management. He became an assistant, and they were okay. They did okay, but he never got a job in football again. So we talk about Peter Taylor's clubs. Peter Taylor, 3 years after leaving Leicester, Peter Taylor apparently did such a bad job that England under-21s appointed him again. So he was England under-21s manager before he was Leicester manager. He was actually England manager, as Brad pointed out. He gave Beckham the captaincy. He was asked to take over once Kevin Keegan had dipped out. But after he left Leicester, his stock was still high enough that England appointed him as the under-21 manager again. Later in his career, he was under-20s manager. So this isn't a bad manager. What I would say about Peter Taylor is what happened is his team had a shocking result against Wycombe, and that absolutely drained the confidence out of the team. In the same way that happened to Brendan when we lost the Aston Villa semi-final. That team then went on a shocking run, and we lost out of the top 4. So this can happen to a team. You have a bad result, it knocks the confidence. Let's not forget, before that game, Leicester had won the last 4 home games before the Wycombe game, and that included wins over Chelsea and Liverpool. They beat Liverpool 2-0. He then made some changes from that.
Mate.
All right. He made some changes from that team that beat Liverpool 2-0 for the Wycombe game. Guess who he took out? He took out Junior Lewis for the Wycombe game. So Junior Lewis was in the team that beat Liverpool, was in the team that beat, and then he took him out and we lost to Wycombe. I'm not saying the two did, but that Wycombe game clearly affected the confidence, and that was the downward spiral. I'm not sure any manager could have come back from. He is to blame for that one, but let's not forget, nobody had a problem with him before that game. So if we're looking at, was he a bad manager? We were saying he's a bad manager for the second half of his tenure. The first half, he got us to the top of the table and an FA Cup quarter-final. So I think when you're comparing these, 35% win percentage against 12.5, worst three, clearly Frank McLintock has to have won that as the worst manager.
That's the time up. And I do apologise. Well done, Craig. I had to take, and I think Brad was looking a bit as to what's happening, but when I had the timer on, your connection was even worse. So this was sort of half and half was sort of the best thing we got for you, which is why I was having to say 1 minute, So we're going to bring Brad in. So apologies, Brad. That was why he did have the timer on, but like you said, he was still crackling and what have you. So I actually do think that it's Craig's impersonation of Peter Crouch doing the robot. That's what it is, I thought he froze. He had frozen for a minute there. He's done the John Barnes Anfield rap. Now he's doing the Peter Crouch robot. We're going to put the two together. I think we've got a bit of somebody we can send in for Britain's Got Talent. you all keep freezing, Craig. So bear with me on this one. So again, I don't know if you wish to. No, it's not a problem. Like I say. Brad, we're going to go with your summary now. So I'm just going to take you out, Craig. Not literally. You're not my sort. I prefer blondes, but there we go. Right. So, Brad, let me just set the timer. You see, everybody presumed that Peter Taylor was okay. He was going to be the worst, but basically, it's a tight one, isn't it?
No, it's not. Craig's made some great arguments, but unfortunately, he had to spend 2.5 minutes talking about my manager that finished in the conference as a career and relegated several teams because he had no more to talk about on McClintock, I'm afraid. So, for me, I just think I'm going to wrap this up nicely and get my revenge on Craig. I'm terrible with a smile because he knows I'm only half jesting on it. I'm just trying to get that low blow back from the last time when he had to dig low at me on the Ranieri-Rodgers argument.
Right, okay, so this is 2 minutes now just to wrap it up. It's not coming into the screen. Will it do now? Yep, there we go. So 2 minutes and your time starts as soon as you say your first word.
To summarise this, Peter Taylor versus McClintock, it's been an experience. It's been, to learn about someone who's nearly as bad as Taylor. I mean, you might argue 35%, 12.5%, but we're talking about the damage done to the club. And in essence, if Peter Taylor never existed, Frank McClintock would probably take this hands down in the fact that they're both similar styles. Maybe somehow down the line they're related because they're genetically both bad managers, clearly, because they were complete disasters. The only thing that you keep having to mention, though, Craig, is you keep having an end to it that's quite positive. And I can never think of one when it comes to Taylor. I really can't. I mean, it's clear. It's clear as a day. The second he started stamping his own authority in, just like you said about, McClintock. Talk about similarities and the closest comparisons you're going to get. Because once they started meddling, Peter Taylor did it worse fashion to a better side and took it all completely apart. It was just disastrous. I mean, there was so much wrong with that side. There were so many bad memories. There were so many bad players. There were so many distasteful moments. There's so many Taylor moments that leave such a sour taste in your mouth. Peter Taylor was the Thanos at Filbert Street. He came in and he snapped. The second he snapped his fingers, he decimated half the side. And he did it with his son at his side. That just shows that maybe Taylor was only built to be a family man and not a football man, because he sure did like to take that boy around the world, didn't he? All at lower league level, so he can't have been much cop. Stretching it out there, really grasping straws to say that he was the key component behind our Wickham defeat. And managers have bounced back before, remember that. I just noticed the time was going to go. I had a little bit extra.
Yeah, there it goes. Okay, well rounded up. And talking about rounding up, let's get. I was asked. Somebody did ask me once. You know, they did say I was. A farmer said, "I've got 98 sheep. Can you round them up for me?" I said, "Sure, 100." Bum. Okay.
They get worse every week. They get worse.
That is a Frank McLintock stroke Peter Taylor joke for you there. That's how bad it is. Okay, Brad, thank you very much. We'll see you again in a minute. Craig, how are we feeling, sir?
Fine. I mean, I don't understand how anybody could still pick Peter Taylor. You know, now they've actually found out how bad McLintock was. I know. You know, when we went top of the league, I don't think anybody said Peter Taylor was a bad manager. So, you know, we're looking at half of his Leicester City career. Half of it, he was brilliant. Yes, indeed. Well, you've got. We're going to try it again with a timer. If it doesn't work, then this is a minute, 30 seconds, and 30 seconds. How it's split, because it's 2 minutes. This one, I will shout the time out to you, but we'll try it again and see if this works with you. So again, as soon as you say your first word, sir. Okay, so I'm just going to put my own timer on here. Look. Yes, we're comparing two managers. So let's just go through a few facts, shall we? The reason I couldn't speak about Frank McLintock's managerial career after Leicester is that he didn't have one. He was that bad. He had only 2 full seasons as a manager, Frank McLintock, and his highest position he finished 10th in Division 3. I'll go back to it. 12.5% win percentage, the worst in the club's history. I don't know how you can't say he was wasn't the worst manager. As I say, Peter Taylor, half of it was great. Cup quarter final, top of the league, great. Nobody was saying he was the worst manager then. As I say, could have gone the other way with Brendan if we hadn't have bounced back and had the end of the season. Frank McLintock's period didn't last half a season. 3 games, 2 draws, 1 win, and then didn't win again for another 12 games, including 10 defeats. 26 defeats, so 26, 1 win in 26. That's his record, and he sold legends and replaced them with his mates
1 minute,
at the end of it. Yeah, you know, for someone to have that bad a record in only 1 season, to have no highs, I can't even talk about the highs. I'd love to be able to say, well, remember that week that we got to the top of the Premier League, or you know, when we had that couple of great cup wins and we ended up in a cup quarter final. I'd love to be able to say that. All I can talk about during his time here was 4 wins. 4 wins. Yeah, you're putting him up against Peter Taylor. It's clear from the win percentage, from the fact that he sold all the players, the fact that nobody wanted him, he became a TV pundit.
There you go. I'm sorry, Craig, your time is up. I've had to mute you at the end there. Little cheeky Craig trying to get an extra seconds in there, young man. You may have had
adding up all the ones where I broke up.
I might actually just have to sort of take a point off you for that one. I'll tell you. Actually,
whoa.
He's froze. Oh no, he's back with us. He's back with us. You froze it. I have to say that Frank McLintock, yes, I mean he does have a 12.5% win rate as manager compared to Peter Taylor's 35.19, but Peter Taylor wasn't actually the worst ever Leicester City manager. We do actually have somebody who actually has a 0% win rate. Now, it was during World War II when we were playing in like a friendly league, but hey, you know.
It was, what's his face who had the cap, who was in charge of like the Carling Cup game against Chelsea, Frank Burrows, something like that. Am I thinking of? I was going to say him for a sec.
Well, we're only looking at sort of permanent managers, but do you know the funny thing, guys, right? And I'm going to say this in fairness to you both. Jimmy Bloomfield, and I didn't realise this, who actually Frank McLintock took over and who I certainly do, and I think those of us of a certain age remember the Worthington, Weller, Glover, Birchnell years. Jimmy Bloomfield only had a 29.8% win rate. And that is, to be honest with you, I found very, very surprising. His win rate was less than Peter Taylor. Also, though, sorry, Craig.
I was going to say, I mean, the thing with Peter Taylor is it's that one game, isn't it, where it all crumbled, and that's the one game that everybody remembers where it all crumbled and we never recovered from it. From McClintock, it was just the whole season.
Yeah, the thing is, though, but the thing is with Taylor is, you say half a season, but they both ruined the club in the same spectacular thing. It was more a case that Peter Taylor, especially if you, I'm sure O'Neill's record and Leicester's positioning wise in comparison to where they were before McClintock came over, Leicester were at a high. People remember such a devastation of being top end cup winners. The way he kind of only held that side together, and then the second, just like McClintock was allowed to do it from the start. There's not a chance, I feel. I genuinely think we wouldn't have got as far as we did in the cup and been up near the top of the league had Taylor came in and done exactly what he did at that halfway when he changed things. I think you would have got as far. They destroyed it in the same space of time, didn't they? Once they started,
you can draw the same comparisons with that Wickham game as Brendan, though, when we lost the Aston Villa semi-final, and the confidence of the player went. The thing was,
but that's what
Brendan got the opportunity to put it right again. Peter Taylor didn't.
Yeah,
you know, so who's to say? I'm not saying that they are level. What I'm saying is that one bad result can drain the confidence of the best players, and I think that contributed to it. As I said, you've only got to look at the 4 games before. We beat Chelsea, we beat Liverpool. We weren't a bad team. We became a very bad team after that Wickham game.
I think what you're going to look at is the fact of every manager will have a bad game, but it's how they respond to that bad game. Martin O'Neill had that bad game. Was it against Sheffield United when the fans were protesting? But he turned it round, and like you say, Brendan turned it round. I mean, Martin O'Neill's win rate was only 38%.
Around that season. Yeah, he didn't turn it round that season, did he? We won 2 out of the last 10.
He snuck that playoffs, didn't he? I think that's what did it for O'Neill when he was there.
Yeah.
The thing that did me for Taylor is when it comes to managers that have them stages, like we said with O'Neill, like you brought up with Rodgers, is after that Wickham defeat, we won 1 of our last 10 games. And for me, that should have been Taylor out the door. He should not have been allowed to.
As I said, Brendan won 2 out of his last 10.
Yeah.
Would you have sacked him?
The problem is the fall from grace, isn't it? It's a perspective things for these managers. That like back then we're also talking McClintock and Taylor managed it when the Premiership was a bit more closer. I mean, you could be like 7 or 8 points off relegation, and unfortunately you get dragged into it. The thing is, at least McClintock had a decent run. That's the way I see it. So that's the only good.
No, I get the fall from grace because Brendan took us from 4th to 5th, and Taylor took us from top of the table where he managed to get us.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm impressed, mate, because to be honest with you, I didn't think there was anyone that would have a cloth on what Taylor did in a dramatic fashion. But McClintock's, I've got to give you credit where it's due, mate. That was a really good argument you put forward.
Guys, all I can say is
unbelievable, Jeff.
So, look, I'm going to have to make a decision. I feel a bit like Simon Cowell here. Take a very quick break, not long enough for you to nip to the toilet, Craig, but a very quick break, and then I'll come back and tell you who's won.
Hi, Alan Smith here. Be sure to watch and listen to Chris on Leicester Till I Die TV. You can also subscribe on YouTube and various social media channels. Up the Foxes!
And you'll all remember Alan Smith. And next Wednesday, no, it's not, next Tuesday, the 13th of July, 5 p.m. Tune in because we are having a one-to-one with Alan Smith. The older ones obviously remember when he played for us. The younger ones will know him as the voice of FIFA and a Sky commentator. But at one point, he was Gary Lineker's strike partner before he went to some team down in London. But 5 o'clock next Tuesday, the 13th, a one-to-one conversation with me and Alan Smith. Right, guys. So I've got to say here, it's a lot of people would think it's going to be Peter Taylor. But Peter Taylor and Frank McLintock, I've brought these two together because I say I am of a certain age and I will remember. And Craig's gone again. He's given up. He's given up before he's accepted defeat and moved on, hasn't he? But and I understand that obviously, you know, like you said very, very generously, Brad, you know, you don't remember Frank McLintock and you didn't realise there was somebody that was possibly as bad as Peter Taylor. And you both argued extremely well. The thing with Peter Taylor is he did when he came in, he didn't get rid of the players straight away. He came in and he took us to the top of that league. We were 2 weeks at the top of the Premier League for the first time in our history. Okay, one of those weeks was an international week, so it would have only normally have been 1 week. But you're quite right. He destroyed the club. He took the club in. Us going down meant we went into administration, which was bad. Would we have gone into administration had we managed to survive that season?
I think the revenues would have kept up, mate. If anything, he was nearly one of the biggest reasons behind us not having been able to do this, because Leicester would have been starting again. They'd have been completely torn apart as a club. I feel.
Yes,
we were looking at first suffered more than what we did when it happened.
But, you know, a lot of the blame, and for Frank McLintock as well, you do have to look at the board. You know, it was the board that let Peter Taylor go and spend millions on players that were totally rubbish. It was the board that, as a top of the top league club in the top flight, brought in a manager who had no experience. You know, like I say, we hadn't won anything under Jimmy Bloomfield, but we were in the top flight. We were finishing mid-table. The crowd turned against him because we weren't winning anything. And I can always say, be careful what you wish for, because we got Frank in, and by it did go downhill. But Frank never took us to the top of the league. Frank never took us. I mean, you know, a quarter-final of the FA Cup. Had we lost that quarter-final to Liverpool, you know, had we gone away to Liverpool and lost it, we wouldn't be having this. You know, we wouldn't be using that game as, you know, remembering the fact that we lost to Liverpool, like the fact that we lost to Wickham, who couldn't even provide a striker and that to advertise for one on teletext, and he happened to score the winning goal after their manager was sent off. So I want to say Peter Taylor, just because, like I say, I think the majority of people would expect me to. But a 35% win rate is actually, like I say, it's up there. Can I just
say though, it might be 35 against 12.5%, but Taylor probably took the win percentage down, where in a dramatic style. Whereas you say that the legends of McClintock took out the club was at 29% before. So they weren't exactly doing much brilliant with the manager before. He probably only took a bunch of players that couldn't perform together for whatever reason, or play a style of play, and made it less more awful. than what it
Sounds
was
to me.
towards the end.
Sounds to me like you're saying Bloomfield was worse than Taylor as well. So
No, not even slightly, because that's again on. It's not saying don't do that. Come on, don't do that. You'll get riots. You're winning this one, mate. Don't throw it out the way yet. Don't throw it under the bus yet.
In those days, of course, we played more games in the division because there was more teams in the division. I just think it was the speed, you know. Peter Taylor was with us 15 months. Frank McLintock didn't even last a year. And the thing for me was that, you know, Peter Taylor, he had the experience, so he should have done better. You know, Frank McLintock, it was his first managerial job. Would a team in the Premier League these days give an ex-player their first managerial job? Frank Lampard had to go down to the Championship. Wayne Rooney had to go down to the Championship, stroke League One. Ha, 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 with Derby. Yeah. I've made my decision. I'm going to drag this out, you know, now, like the X Factor. I better not drag it out too long. It's about kickoff. Guys, I'm sorry. I am really, really sorry for Brad, because this is the second one he's going to lose, but it is Frank McLintock. Simply because he destroyed the club in a season. He took us down, and you could say after Frank McLintock that it all went wrong for a long time. I don't think we actually got back after Frank McLintock. We had the Jock Wallace years. So that was one good thing. He did bring Jock Wallace in after, of course, the great reign of the Ian McFarlane, who, of course, dearly departed Ian, but God rest in peace. But he did actually bring Jock Wallace in. But no, it was just the speed in which it all happened. You know, they both brought bad players in, but at least with Peter Taylor, they weren't sort of, they were young and bad. Whereas, you know, with Frank McLintock, they were just old and bad, weren't they? You know, and Dennis Wise, bringing Dennis Wise to the club nearly tipped it over. But I remember Roger Davis all too well.
I've got to say, Brad, you know, before I started researching Frank, I thought I had absolutely no chance, because I would have been with you on your camp of Taylor. But when you look at what McLintock did, it's pretty abysmal.
I've got to admit, like I said, I was the same as you. Knew of Frank McLintock, knew he was fairly bad, but didn't know it. At some points, mate, I was kind of forgetting that you wasn't talking about Taylor, because it's astonishing that when they meet for how quickly they destroyed the club in comparison in that way, how similar it was. You know, they got rid of legends. But, you know, they got rid of icons and brought in Troy. It was just I think the worst thing was with McLintock, we didn't even have any highs. At least we did have that fortnight of being top of the league with Taylor. That was my thing. I knew I was going to have to kind of try and play that off as it wasn't really him, and I knew it wasn't going to be the easiest, and it turns out it wasn't the easiest at all, because obviously Craig's won this one, and you know, a lot of the people might have been in the comments at the start, you know, may not have changed their opinion because they remember. You know, this is also, you've got to remember, it's also how it's perceived.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will always perceive Taylor to be the best, because when I've been asked questions to like build sides and stuff, I try and do it off generations I've seen play.
Yeah.
And can fairly say the reasons why I put them in the team more than I picked that one because everybody else did, sort of thing.
But he still doesn't know. He still doesn't know whether they're left or right. Obviously, that's
no, I don't. Still don't, mate. Still don't. That's right. I figured that out this time.
That's right, mate. That's right up there.
Right. And that's back, and that's down. Right.
That's it. Guys, I appreciate the football's on, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you both so very much for that. I'm glad you, because when I first came up with this, you went. Nobody's been as bad as Peter Taylor. I'm thinking, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. But thanks very much, guys. Brad, have a great holiday, mate. I hope North Macedonia is on the green list, as Craig said earlier, and that you bring us back some nice photos of I want to say the North Macedonian coast, but I don't think they've even got a coastline, have they?
I'll definitely enjoy my time off, mate. So thanks for that. It's still been enjoying. So I'm looking forward to when I'm back and we do another one of these because. I need to get an early goal in the second half against Craig. I'm turning it down and finding myself on the back front here. I thought I was like one of the things.
It's a bit like Ant versus Deck, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's which one I am because I don't know.
Hey, have a great holiday, Brad. Look forward to going for round 3 when you're back.
Yeah, enjoy it, Brad. Wave as you go past, mate, and have a great time. Try and watch the games. Obviously, I think you still will do, but hey, have a break from this and enjoy yourself. Rest up, and we'll see you when you're back. You'll come back fighting fit for Craig, and we'll have Craig Levine versus Ian Holloway.
Oh God, yeah, that's the way to bring me back.
Now that could be interesting. Brad, thanks very much, mate. Have a good holiday.
Cheers, Brad.
Cheers. Craig, we will see you again on Thursday. And this is a good one because we're actually going to have some guests in. So we've got, I don't know if you saw the other day, we Dan from Burnley, he pops in quite a bit, and he's a mod in here, and he's a great lad. Spitting image for Ed Sheeran, but he's always getting told that. But yeah, great lad. And Maisie, and she's great. She's really, really knowledgeable about football. Even though she's a Man United fan, but they're going to come in, and I'm going to let them decide.
Cool.
So you've not got me to convince this time. You're going to have 2 independent ones, and do you remember what it is?
The VAR versus ref, isn't it?
It is. All those years we shouted out that we wanted this VAR, and has it destroyed football? I'll leave that one with you. Go and enjoy the game, mate. I'm keeping you. Enjoy it. Thanks for tonight. Well done on winning. 2-0 up, and I'll see you on Thursday. And let's hope we're celebrating and England win.
Indeed. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks so much to Craig for that. And I'm going to go because the football's on. We're also going to be back tomorrow night as well. That will be with Daniel. We're going to be post-match. So about 10:15, all depending when, of course, the game finishes. If it goes to extra time, if it goes to penalties. God, can you imagine? My heart won't stand it. So, Frank McLintock, excuse me, is a worse manager than Peter Taylor. But let's face it was close. Guys, thanks so much. 10:15 or later tomorrow, soon, about 5-10 minutes after the match finishes. Come on, England, we can do it. And then ref versus VAR on Thursday at 7. Good night. Go and enjoy the match. Thanks for joining in and thanks for watching. Good night now.
Hello, Matt Elliott here. Be sure to watch Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and follow all their social media platforms for all the latest updates and news on Leicester City Football Club.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye and see you next time.
Come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.